Okay, so now we are on to US Treasuries. From here on, where we're going to be going with bonds is we're going to be talking about the specific issuers. Depending on who is issuing the bond, whether it's a government, whether it's a government subdivision, or whether it's a corporation, is going to tell now the differences between how those bonds work. So the first bonds we're going to start talking about are ones that are issued by the U.S. government, direct U.S. Treasuries, and some of the similar ones to that. But first we need to talk about Treasury auctions. There are 3 steps in a Treasury auction. The first step is the announcement. That is just what it says, the details. The amount of the securities that are going to be offered. What is the date? What is the issuance date? The date both of the auction and when the securities are going to be issued. When is the maturity date of those securities? What are the terms and conditions of the offering? Is it non-competitive or competitive? Is it a combination? When are the close times? And any other pertinent information. This list that we're going to go through, you probably want to know what they are, and if you see a question, understand what that step means, but you're not going to have to go into any of the real details on it. Step 2 is the actual bidding process. And there are again 2 ways of bidding. We have the competitive bidding. That is limited to 35% of the offering amount. That means that no bidder can buy all of them. The bidder is specifying the rate or the yield or the discount, whatever kind of way they're going to be pricing it. They're all basically the same because, as we know, bonds are either sold at par, or when we get into the specific types, Treasury bills are sold at a discount from par, which is why the discount margin may be used in certain treasuries if they're bidding on the Treasury bills, which we will be discussing very shortly in this section. Could be non-competitive. That's limited to a purchase of only $5 million per auction. The bidder agrees to accept the rate, the yield, or the discount margin determined at the auction. What that means is that non-competitive, every broker-dealer is bidding on at most $5 million, and that they are setting their bid, but whatever the winning bid is, every bidder who bids must be willing to accept that winning bid, even if it's lower than theirs, as it very likely could be. Certainly it's going to be higher than theirs, or it wouldn't be the winner. The bidding limits apply both to apply cumulatively to both methods, because in many cases Treasury auctions use both competitive and non-competitive offerings in the same basic auction. Step 3 is the actual issuance of the purchased securities. On the issue date, the Treasury delivers the securities to the bidders, who are awarded the securities based on the specific bids that they made, the specific auctions, and then charges the accounts of those bidders for the payment of the securities. Now, as I mentioned, direct U.S. government debt. We're going to list them out here, and then I'm going to show you a picture that sort of summarizes everything. Treasury bills, as I mentioned before a little bit, are a zero coupon bond. They pay no interest. They are sold for less than par. They mature at par. Their maturity is at most 1 year. As we're going to see on the next page, they're limited to issuing in 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, or 12 month maturities. That's it. There are no other treasuries. Sorry, there are no other Treasury bills. There are other treasuries. There are Treasury notes, for example. These are 2 to 10 year maturity and semi-annual interest, and they are sold at par like regular bonds, as we have discussed. Now, technically speaking, any U.S. government debt that is more than 1 year is a Treasury note. There just aren't anything. It's either a 1 year bill or a 2 year note. There aren't like 1.5 year treasuries or anything. Treasury bonds are 10 or more years. They're sold at par with semi-annual interest, just like regular bonds. Notes and bonds are very similar. The only difference is the maturity. Notes are middle term, bills are shortest. Notes are middle, and bonds are the longest. Bills are shortest, bonds are longest. Here is a U.S. government bond. It was 4.25%. You can see it had a different par value. It would specifically say it. This one was $10,000. It specifically says it's not $1,000. It specifically says $10,000. Here's a Treasury bill. It was January 29th to July 30th, 1970. This was a 6-month Treasury bill, $1,000 par, as most bonds are. Here is a sort of table that goes through everything. Remember, with direct government debt, is the safest security in the world. There are 2 laws that you really want to deal with in economics and understand them. The one I've already mentioned a little bit is the risk and return. The greater the risk, the greater the return. Conversely, the lower the risk, the lower the return. If these are the safest security in the world, imagine what the returns really are. The other law, which we're going to be discussing more later, we don't really need it quite as much, is the idea of supply and demand. But as I said, we're going to be getting to that in a later unit. The minimum denomination for all of these is 1,000. They can't be any less, but they could be all the way up to $5 million. These are the marketable or negotiable securities. That means we can sell them ourselves. If I have a Treasury bill or a note or a bond, and you would like to buy it, and we can discuss between ourselves an efficient price, a good price, and we both agree to it, we can do the trade ourselves. We can buy them on stock exchanges. We can go to broker-dealers and buy them. They trade on exchanges. They can be bought and sold by anyone. Non-negotiable, non-marketable, redeemable securities that we will be discussing some of them, including this one down here shortly, means that you can't sell them. They can only be redeemed by the issuer. You can get your money back. Don't worry about getting your money back. But there's only one organization, one group, one person that can actually give you your money back. You can't just go to a neighbor and see if they want to buy it and try. But as I said, Treasury bills have maturities of 4, 13, 26, or 52 weeks. That is 1, 3, 6, or 12 months. There are no 9-month bills. They are sold at a discount, less than par. But they're a zero coupon bond. They do not pay any interest payments. They do not pay any coupon payments. And they mature at par. So at maturity is when you collect your money. The idea here is like buying a $1,000 Treasury bill for $950 or something. You know you're going to get your money back. It's the federal government. The federal government really can't default. It's really the only bond, the only debt that can't default, that can't go bankrupt, because it can literally print the money. I mean, people might think Google prints money or Apple prints money. They don't really print money. They theoretically could run out of money. The U.S. federal government really can't. They control the printing presses. They can literally print money. So you don't have to worry about credit risk. You want to remember the order of these. Bills, notes, bonds, BNB. Notes are in the middle. Bills are short-term. Bonds are long-term. You think of bills come every month, right? We get a phone bill, we get a heating bill, we get a rent bill, we get all the bills each month, short-term. But bonds we sort of think of as a longer-term investment, so maybe that'll help keep them straight. As I mentioned about negotiable, and in this case non-negotiable, EE bonds are minimally tested. You sort of sometimes need to know them. It's more tested in the test prep generally than on the real test, it seems. But these don't trade on markets. These are non-negotiable, non-redeemable. These are only redeemable by the issuer, in this case, the federal government. These are the things that you buy at like birth confirmations, at baptisms, at bar and bat mitzvahs, at weddings, things like that, where they're going to mature in 15 or 20 years, 12 to 15, 20 years, whatever they're going to be, and they're going to double. Which means if you're buying them at 25, well, that's actually a $50 face. They're going to double in price. If you buy them at 50, you get 100. Those are the EE bonds. Treasury inflation protected securities tips. We're going to discuss in a later unit, as well as a little bit throughout, the idea of inflation. That inflation is that growing of money that depletes money as it stays. That's the idea of why you don't want your clients to invest by putting their money under their mattress. Yeah, they're not going to lose money. They're also not going to get money, and that $1,000 that they put 10 years ago isn't going to buy the same things now as it could have back then. That $1,000 bond that I bought 20 years ago that's maturing, that $1,000 that I'm going to be getting at maturity is not the same $1,000 I invested. That $50 a year that I'm getting, or $80 a year if it's a 5 or an 8% bond, is going to be $50 a year for the life of the bond. As I've said, the coupon doesn't change. $50 a year 20 years ago is not the same as $50 today. That is in all what are called fixed income securities, bonds and preferred stock primarily, along with fixed annuities. Fixed annuities, inflation is the greatest risk. All of them except one, this one. The Treasury inflation protected securities is specifically designed that every 6 months the par value increases. This is the only bond that has a par value that is not constant. The coupon percentage is constant, but the par value adjusts every 6 months for the consumer price index. That's CPI, it's the consumer price index. That is how we measure inflation. There's a basket of goods, things like gasoline and food and housing costs and travel. Haircuts are included in there too. All of that is priced each year. And as you see, year after year, the prices of that basket of goods goes up. That's how they measure inflation. So every 6 months, the tip is going to have its par value adjusted for inflation. The par value can go down. It can never go below 1,000. You will always get your $1,000 back, even if inflation has been negative. It never has over that long a period, but still, it conceivably could be. But the coupon is fixed. The coupon doesn't change. But since the coupon is based on the par value, the semi-annual interest does go up over time as well. That's a TIP, a Treasury inflation protected security. The other type of weird treasury is a strip. I have an animation below that goes into this a little bit more. It uses a different type of treasury, but they all work the same basic idea. It's the separately trading of registered interest and principal of securities. What it basically does is it breaks apart a treasury, a note or a bond. I'm going to show you here a bond. Below I show you a note because it was easier to animate the fewer coupons. And it separates them into interest payments and then a final principal. So if we have this 30-year bond, it was issued in 2010, matures in 2040. It's a very official government treasury bond. You can see the official seal. Very official. This is exactly what they look like. Sure. Let's just pretend. But the idea of what this treasury bond is it's 5%. But its par is $1 million. So we take 5% of $1 million. We'd find out that that is $50,000 a year. Divide by 2, that's $25,000 every 6 months. In a normal situation, whoever owns this, every 6 months gets $25,000. But what I did is I bought this bond. I then sold to 61 people these 61 payments. How did I get 61? Well, it's 30-year bond, correct? We said that here. It's a 30-year bond. A 30-year bond is going to be paying 2 a year. So that's 60 interest payments, plus this final maturity payment of $1 million. So it's 60 interest payments plus $1 million final payment that's payable in 30 years. And those $25,000, the 60 $25,000 payments are going to be spread out every 6 months. And so I can sell them. And that's what I do with a strip, sorry. What I do is I sell them, and when they come in, I simply give them to who bought them. So I don't necessarily know what this $25,000 zero coupon is here. It's going to be paid 198 months after this when it first came out. But I know it's going to be worth more than this one, which comes out 6 months after this. And I know it's going to be worth less than this one, which comes out 6 months before. Now, this one here that's going to be due 6 months after I buy it, yeah, it's probably worth like $24,500 or more. I mean, it's most of $25,000. It's 6 months. How much money do you expect to make from the United States government in 6 months? Not a lot. It's going to basically be almost $25,000. But this one over here that's going to be due in 30 years, 360 months, the last interest payment, that one might only be worth a couple grand. But as you could imagine, each of these $25,000 backed by the federal government is going to be worth some money. And that's what a strip is. If the test asks about somebody having a lump sum of money, wanting to invest it for a specific goal in the future. I have $20,000 now. I want to invest it for my child's college in 15 years, but I have a lump sum today. Strips may be an answer that they want you to go with. It's something to consider there. It is a treasury, but it's a zero coupon treasury. It does not pay interest payments because you're actually buying the interest payments. That's what a strip is. They are, as I said, zero coupon bonds. Agency securities. There's one primarily that you need to be aware of, GNMA, the Government National Mortgage Association, Ginnie Mae. It has monthly income. Most bonds we talk about are every 6 months, semi-annually. Ginnie Mae's are monthly. The money itself is backed by low-income housing loans. The reason it's monthly is these loans pay for low-income mortgages. Those mortgage payments are made each month by the homeowners. They have very, very high payment rates. And that money comes into the Ginnie Mae, and then it gets just sent out to the holders. But it is backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. If something happens to those mortgage payments, the U.S. government says it will make those payments whole. So it's got that kind of guarantee. So these are pretty secure. They're not going to be quite as secure as treasuries, but they're pretty close. The other agencies are not backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, and they have semi-annual, normal, regular. These are private corporations. They include Fannie Mae, FNMA. It is backed by housing loans. It includes Freddie. That's also backed by housing loans. These two are designed to help increase the mortgage offerings to help make it easier for Americans to buy homes. And Sallie Mae is backed by student loans. In yet another political scandal, Freddie Mac has confessed to having an affair with Fannie Mae. always like that one. That brings us to the end of this section. We will be getting into next on municipal and corporates, which are, municipals are a type of government. They are a subsidiary, cities and states and things. And corporations are issued by corporations. So we'll be discussing them shortly. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon.